I'm going to go ahead and just get some scriptures out this morning to just get started so we can have that ready. I'll start on this side. Go with Jimmy, if you would get for us our pilot scripture, which is 3 John verse 2. Did I see another hand back there? Like next to you or not? No? All right, John. If John could get Luke 14:28. Anybody else on this side? No? Okay. So then we're here in the middle. Russ, would you mind grabbing Luke 14:31? Shauna, Proverbs 6 through 11. And then Ivan, Genesis 41, 33 to 36. Moving on back in the middle. Anybody else in the middle help us out? Jacob Hall, if you could grab Proverbs 24, verse 3. And who else? Anybody else in the middle? All right. So we'll come over here. Mr. Tony. Mr. Tony, if you would get, I apologize. I think that's it. Proverbs 10:4. Proverbs 10:4. There we go. Thought there was one more. Okay. Yeah, that should be our last verse is there. Proverbs 10, verse 4. All right. So we're continuing with our study on kingdom prosperity. And we want to get right into our pilot text. So if Jimmy, if you could read that, please.
Verse 2. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your souls prosper.
Okay, so I hope it's been coming through clearly. I believe it has, but we're not just studying prosperity for prosperity's sake. Okay, that is unbiblical. That is not a godly view of this. We're not trying to figure out a get-rich scheme, a religious get-rich scheme. Okay, the Bible gives lots of balance on this kind of thing, and understanding what we're talking about. Really, what we're talking about with kingdom prosperity is being able to do God's will. Is really doing the will of God and having what we need, the resources that are needed in doing that. So, and notice there's an inseparable connection between when he says here, he says, I want you to prosper as your soul prospers. That cannot be divorced. Okay, through this whole study, that should be the undercurrent and the understanding. Everything we're talking about is in that context. Okay, context is everything, right? Context is king, as they say. It comes to your Bible, and this is running throughout this entire study. So I just want to re-emphasize that. And so we talked about poor financial decisions. We had 2 studies on that. Today we're going to look at budgeting. And the title of this study is Holy Budgeting. Let me adjust this a little bit. I got it a little high, I think. And so a budget is basically, one of the ways you could define it, is a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went, right? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in your Financial Peace University, those of you that are going to that, you're talking about budgets, right? You're working on that. And so, did you already cover budgeting? Yes? Okay. Are you still covering it, or you're just working through it? Always, constantly, yeah. So, now, most of us, none of this is going to be new this morning. But one thing I would say, it's interesting. I was just talking to somebody Friday, I think it was, and he's like, yeah, I know how to do it. I know what I need to do. I just haven't been doing it. So that's really where the rubber meets the road. We need to put into practice what we already know to do a lot of the time. And that's kind of a principle that applies in lots of areas of life, right? So, but we are going to cover budgeting, and so budget and how to set up a budget. And really, a budget has everything to do with priority in life. It really has everything to do with priorities in life. If you want to know the priority of somebody's life, if they have a budget, you can tell what they're into by looking at their budget, if they have a budget. If they don't have a budget, well, that can tell you a lot of stuff about them as well. Amen? So first thing we're going to look at is planning to fail. Now, our financial future is determined by the decisions that we make before we're in our future. Okay? And so a plan is I'm making decisions on how I'm going to manage my money before I actually have it in my hand. Okay? And some of you say, well, I never have it in my hand, hardly ever. It's already spent before I get it. Well, a budget can help you with that. And so Luke 14:28, Jesus hints at a budget. Let's go ahead and read that verse.
For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it?
All right, so this is basic budgeting. So there's certain things in life that we need to do. I need somewhere to live. I need somebody to be my spouse. I need a way to get around, some of these basic things. Well, we need to budget for those things and plan what is it that I need, what is it that I can afford, and et cetera. What are the options? And a budget will help you. It'll inform you and start to, you prioritize life. And your budget will help you understand and help you know, okay, so this is what I want, but my budget is helping me to come to grips with reality. And reality says I may not be able to have what I want right now. Okay, so a budget will help you and save you from a lot of regret where, we talked about decisions in the past. This is what I want, I'm just going for it, and then you regret it in the future. Well, a budget will save you from that because your budget will tell you, you can't have what you want right now. And how many know, as much as we don't like it, it's good to hear no sometimes in life. No, you will not do that. No, you can't do that. It's vexing, but it really is healthy. It's really very healthy. And a budget, thank God, it'll tell us no. So then let's take a look at Luke 14, verse 31, because this plays out, it's more than just buying things. A budget has much more to do with relationships in life and just life in general. As I mentioned, a budget is all about priorities in life. Go ahead, Russ.
Or what king, going to make war against another king, sitteth not down first, and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000?
All right. So could you defeat a force of 20,000 with a force of 10,000? It depends. You better figure out what you've got. You might be able to do it, but you better figure out what you've got. If you've got 10,000 elite special forces guys with equipment and supplies, and they're going to have support to do what they need to do in order to take on 20,000 foot soldiers, you could probably do that. But if you got 10,000 special elite warriors, but you have no beans, no bullets, or no Band-Aids, it doesn't matter how bad those dudes are. If they just don't have what they need to fight, they're not going to be able to do it. They should be able to, but they will not be able to. And you don't want to find that out when they're already on the battlefield. You need to find that out before you go in there. Okay, so this is he's talking about, this is the wisdom in budgeting. It will help you. You know what? We're gonna have to try and do a peace treaty for now, at least in this situation, right? I hope everybody's understanding where we're at. So the biggest mistake that we make in finances is the lack of planning. That's what, last couple weeks have been on. Most of the time we respond in life rather than plan for life. I'm number one guilty party when it comes to that. My if I'm left to my natural self, nothing gets planned. It's just, hey, let's, fly by the seat of your pants. And now it's good to be flexible, but it's better to plan and be flexible than to not plan and just be flexible, because that's not really being flexible. That's just being wagged by the tail, right? Rather than wagging the tail. And so a budget helps you to plan and make sure that you've got everything, that you are able to enjoy the things of life and do God's will. What good is it going to do? Jesus said this, what good does it do a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Well, when we don't budget, you know what? We don't know. We don't have our priorities straight. And we're not going to, there is a discipline that comes with budgeting that will really help you. And it is connected with your destiny this morning. Remember, what we're talking about is not divorced from the prosperity of your soul. Okay, so if I'm not planning and I'm not prioritizing my financial decisions, those financial decisions that I fail to plan for will and can affect my spiritual reality. Okay, it can limit you. We talked about some of those things. And so if we just respond and we go through life just responding in our finances, wow, you see an advertisement, they're getting better and better at advertising, right? They can send you advertisements. You were just thinking about something and pops up on your phone, pops up on your, I don't know, whatever. And you're like, I do need that, right? A lot of advertising, it's commercial break. People would walk. I remember little guy, commercial break would come on. That's time to run to the bathroom. That's time to run grab a snack or something, and then you miss all the commercials and you come back and watch your show that you're interested in. Well, how many know today there's advertising is far more advanced and it's a lot better, a lot more effective. And if you don't have a budget, well, guess what? There's a reason that they spend billions and billions of dollars in advertising, because they know it works. And if you're going to be just responding, you're going to show up, sis, new pair of shoes, purse, new clothes all the time, and regretting it because you didn't have the budget for it. Or guys, what are some things that guys spend money on responsibly, not responsibly, responsively? Tools, guns, yeah. That's about it, no? Right? Sports, I guess. Some guys do sports. I don't really do sports, but boats, electronics, ammunition, yeah. Well, we planned that. No, just kidding. No. But, and so, yeah, so the thing is, you see it, you want it, monkey see, monkey do, and then we regret it. So a budget saves us from that. There's that saying, and I remember we watched the Kent Hovind series on dinosaurs in the Bible and all that kind of stuff 170 years ago. And there was one thing that he said that really stuck in my mind. If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall every time. I was like, man, that's pretty good wisdom, actually. Not too bad for an old Baptist boy. And so this is true. And how are you going to know if your outgo exceeds your income? With a budget. You're not going to figure that out. I mean, you can figure that out another way, and that is when they come knocking at your, they're blowing up your phone trying to collect money from you. You can find out that way, but that's really not the way to do it. So the Bible is clear. The result of a lack of wisdom in planning leads to poverty. It leads to poverty. It leads to a lack of dominion in finances, and that bleeds out into other areas of life. Okay. Proverbs 6, let's read verses 6 through 11.
Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. But you lazy bones, how long will you sleep? When will you wake up? A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber.
Lazy bones. Amen. What version is that? New Living Translation? The New British Living Translation. Amen. And so this is true. It shows, hey, laziness and lack of planning go together. And how many have known people that work really hard but they don't plan, and they're always behind in life, right? So that's a possibility too. But God says, listen, I've put some principles into creation. How many know there's some laws that are in creation that just function regardless of who or what is experiencing that law? So, for example, gravity, right? Gravity affects all of us. It's a law that God has put into creation, and that it just functions, like it or not. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes the law of gravity will hurt you if you violate it, right? Well, there's financial laws, planning. These kinds of things are laws that are written into creation, and God will provide. How many know God is our provider? He does provide. He provides for all of his children. So if I'm his child and I'm not having his provision, where is the problem? Well, it's not on God's side. God's going to do his part. But it may be my failure. Well, but I'm tithing. Okay? That's not enough. Right? That's really not enough. You can't just, hey, I'm going to put 10%. Well, if you don't have a budget, you're not even going to know what 10% is, what the first 10% of your income is. You won't even, I remember when I first got saved, I worked on basically cash only. I'd come with some 20s in my pocket, boom, put them in there, and bless God. And then I started to learn, there's something called a tithe, and there's something called budgets and these kinds of things. Oh, okay. So then I can figure this out. Okay, then, wow, that's a pretty good deal. I'm going to give more than a tithe. But guess what? If I'm not budgeting, I'm not going to know that, and I'm not going to be able to do that. Right? So planning, budgeting, it does require work. It requires effort. And the reality is, if we're not planning, if we don't have a financial plan, we are planning, in a sense, to fail. If you don't plan to succeed, you will fail. And so God has placed this into creation. He planned the universe. He planned time. He planned, you look at the stars. You can find north by finding the Big Dipper. Pretty much any time of night, if as long as it's a clear night, God didn't just throw stars out there and be like, yeah, do what you want. No, there's a plan. There are cycles. There's things work in a certain way, and finances have there's certain laws and rules about them, and one of those principal things is a budget. Any questions up to this point before we move to the second point? Any doubts, fears? Anybody that's mad at me, lift your hand. No. All right, so let's go. We're going to look at having a plan. So a financial plan is called a budget, and it's writing out a plan for my money. And so this, I remember one of the best ways, honestly, and simplest ways is just physical envelopes and cash. So hey, and we're going to get into this in here just a second, but I allocate certain amount for certain needs that I know are coming up, and I set that aside right when I get my paycheck. Tithe, offering, and everything that follows, right? And so budgeting is a biblical principle, and God will bless it. He really does. He blesses budgeting. Genesis 41, let's look at 33 through 36.
And now let Pharaoh look for discerning and wise men and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to keep in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine.
Okay, very good. So now we know, now I understand there's a couple things in this circumstance that are specific to that circumstance, and they don't necessarily apply to us, but there are also some principles that are broader, that do apply in the circumstance and in the broader spectrum. And so one of the things, so some of the stuff that's specific to that was this was specifically prophesied, these 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine was specifically prophesied. God warned Joseph, he warned Pharaoh through the dreams. Joseph interpreted that and then was able to reach the how to deal with that. But and so that was specific to that circumstance. But what we can glean for our own use is the principle of preparing in the good times for when things are not so good. Okay, that applies across the board. That's not just in one certain circumstance. How many know every single one of us, we're going to have times of more and times of less financially, right? We have ups and downs in life. Ups when they show up with coffee and donuts, even though they're late. No, just kidding. And so, sorry, couldn't resist. Anyway, so we have downs. We have times, hey, everything, have you ever gone through a time where it seems like everything breaks at the same time and the kids get sick and it's like, holy moly, this wasn't in the budget, right? This wasn't in the plan. Well, if we have been budgeting for a while and we've been preparing, we will have some store to draw from to get through that time and to make it through without, drastic consequences. So this is one of the huge blessings of a budget. And we know, what did God do with Egypt? When Egypt followed through and they made that plan, they not only did they make it through the years of famine, but they were able to help other people, even other nations. They weren't even Christians, right? Why? Because these were certain laws in creation. They aligned themselves with that, and God blessed that. Okay, obviously his blessing was on Joseph as a man of God. That was a huge element in that as well. I'm not taken away from that, but we need to understand these are some principles that we have to apply. So I want to take a look at making a budget. So where do we start when we're going to make a budget? Well, the first thing we need to know is how much is the cost of living. Just right out the gate. So we have to figure this out. And this is where I mentioned a budget has everything to do with priorities in life. You need to know what your priorities are in life. Or otherwise, you're going to have a really hard time forming a budget. But if you have your priorities in life, you already know what your priorities are. Let's say you have your priorities in line, but you don't have a budget. Well, if you know at least what your priorities in life are, it's really going to help you with the budget. But if you don't even know your priorities in life, you're going to really struggle making a budget. So just going on a personal level, myself, since I got saved, I've made the decision. Jesus is number one in my life. That's right out the gate. So God's will is the first priority. Okay, now what does that mean? Well, God is my provider. When it comes to finances, God is my provider. So what's the first item on my budget? Tithe, offering. What about food? hey, I got more, a little bit more than I used to have, but God's taking care of that, right? God is first, period. The first line on my budget is tithe, and it doesn't change for anything. Why? Because of priorities in life. Does that make sense? Okay, so I know out the gate, and it's more than just 10%. 10% is not touchable. I just know. I get $100, 10 of that, boom, automatically. I'm tithing off of that. Then there's offerings and there's pledges as well. So that's how our budget goes. First off, tithe, offering, pledges, right? Boop, boop, boop. First 3 items in our budget. But what am I getting at? So you need to find out what your expenses are. So I know my tithe is based on my income, right? What my increase is. So that is dependent on what I'm getting at. Now the amount is gonna fluctuate, but the position is not. The priority is not gonna fluctuate. Everybody understand, right? And so then you need to know how much is it gonna cost to keep a roof over your head? First off, what do you need? We need a home, right? You need a house. You need some kind of shelter. We learned in school, food, shelter, and clothing. Those are the essentials of physical life. And so you need a house. You need a place to stay. Whether that's a house or an apartment, duplex, whatever it is, whether you're buying or renting, buying is better, wiser, if you can do it. If that's not really an option for whatever reason, renting is a possibility, but you need to figure out, it's going to cost this much per month to have a place to live. It's going to cost this much per month, food-wise. Now, so I got somewhere to live, we got something to eat. Well, it'd be good to not freeze to death in my house. So I need to pay electric and heating and whatever else. So that needs to be, priorities. Okay? These are priorities. And then clothing. And so you go down the list of priorities in life. You start with the most important, most essential, unchangeable things. And that's how you begin your budget. And you find out how much do these things cost. And there's some things that are going to be fixed. They're not really going to change a lot. Okay? Let's see. Let's go to Proverbs 24, verse 3. Proverbs 24, verse 3.
A house is built by wisdom, and it is established by understanding.
Okay, so this is talking about thinking it through, and being wise about it, and prioritizing. Priorities is a wisdom issue, right? If I'm not wise, my priorities are going to be out of line, right? I'm going to be entertainment's going to be a higher priority. And there are, I would say, millions of people in America. Their entertainment is a higher priority than the things of God, than even their rent or their mortgage. You've heard that horrible story of a couple that was into gaming so heavily, they neglected their newborn child to the point of death. The baby died because they prioritized entertainment. So as the people of God, we ought to have some wisdom and understand why things are prioritized in life. So for forming a budget, we need to know how much things cost. We need to know how much we're making, okay? If you're unemployed, then that needs to change, amen? You have to do something. It might not be exactly what you want, might not be your dream job, but you need some income, okay? So now, how many have income that fluctuates? You don't have you don't live on a salary, right? Yeah, so you work in construction, if you're self-employed, your income is not going to be, this fixed amount every month, no matter what. If you're in the Marine Corps, hey, I already know every 2 weeks, this is what I'm getting. I already know that, okay? But when it comes to construction, for example, it's raining out right now. Well, if you're doing an outdoor job, guess what? Well, today's a day off. It's not a day off as far as like vacation. It's a day, this is going to cost me something. I'm not going to have income for this day. All right, well, that's going to play out. So how do we deal with that? Because I've heard, and this is something, especially in Argentina, when I was in Argentina, not only do a lot of people have a fluctuating income, but the actual value of their money fluctuates constantly. It constantly fluctuates. We're complaining about, what's the inflation at right now? Like 10% or something like that? And we are losing our minds as Americans. They've never experienced anything below, a lot of people there never experienced anything below 30%. The inflation is so insane, it's built into contracts. When they sign a rental agreement, 30% increase right off of the bat every year. Well, no, that's old time. Now it's over 50%. 50% inflation it increases 50% every year. Just you have to sign your contract with that. So they're not just dealing with, hey, I'm working construction. Dang, we missed a day. Well, yeah, we missed a day. Plus, the peso lost half its value this week. Great. Now what? So the peso loses half its value. Guess what the prices do? They double, but the income doesn't change. So it's even more important to budget. And so when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, the temptation is, oh, well, what's the point? I don't have anything fixed. Why even budget? No. It's exactly the opposite. It's even more important to budget. And so what you have to do with a fluctuating income is you get an average. You have to get an average income. And then once you get your average, step back just a little bit, right? We're going to budget for the low end of that average to be on the safe side, if that makes sense. Everyone, you understand what I'm saying? So let's say, and so you're going to have to pay attention. You're going to have to pay attention to what your income has been, and then you're going to have to average that. I'm averaging so much per week. Okay, how many weeks have I been averaging or been keeping track? 8 weeks, okay, 8 weeks at such and such an amount, it's up and down, okay, what's the average? Here it is. Now I'm going to go on the low end of that, and I'm going to base my budget on that. And the longer you can average, the more accurate in that kind of a income, the more accurate your budget can be, if that makes sense, because your average is going to be a little more accurate. So, for example, let's just take one example. 4 weeks salary, you get the total, and then you divide by 4. So let's say it's 600. This month it's been $600 a week. 4 weeks, that's $2,400 a week, or $2,400 per month. So then you take $2,400 divided by 4, 600 is your average, right? Okay, so now I'm budgeting for 500 something. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit to give myself some cushion there. You're kind of building in your savings and your emergency fund there. So then over a longer period of time, you can do 12 months salary, you divide by 12. It's basic math. I'm not the best at math, but some of this stuff we can figure it out. If not, that's cool. We can talk about it. Amen. Now, if you're self-employed or you're like a subcontractor, you have to figure in your expenses. Your income is not part of your expenses, right? So let's say you have to buy a certain amount of materials every month. Well, that's not part of your income. That's an expense. You have to set that aside by itself, right? That's just straight out the gate. I know I need to spend this on materials. This is not. That's not going to be part of my income for my budget, right? Your income is what is after the expenses, after I've bought all the materials and whatever maintenance I need to do on tools, etc. It's after that, okay? Now, if you have a salary, cool. It's a lot more simple, right? And even they even take taxes out for you and everything a lot of the time on salary. So you just get your income. Boom, it's very straightforward, very simple. God bless you, amen. So then now we've got some idea of our income, we've got some idea of some expenses. Now with your expenses, you need to figure out, these are things that are never going to go anywhere, and they're fixed. They're more fixed. Hold on just a second. Before we get any further into that, do we have any questions, any comments before we move on forward? Stephanie?
So for instance, I'm a tutor at our homeschool group, and I get paid by the parents, and then I have to pay X amount of money back to the homeschool group. So I always wondered that, is that something that I would include in my income, even though I know it has to go back?
No. Yeah, that's dedicated to that.
Okay.
Right? If you're not even doing the tutoring, that's not even going to be an element.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, but because you're in the tutoring, that comes with it. You set that that's just dedicated straight to that. That's not part of your income.
Okay, so
Make
if
sense?
anybody I had to pay automatically, like one of the tutors also shares the same class, she takes a sixth of it.
Right, it's your operating cost, if you will.
Okay.
Right, that kind of just rolls over,
All right.
if you will. You don't just ignore it, but you almost, you just set that aside. That is what it is, and it stays that way. Does that make sense? Kevin?
I would say to simplify things, if you've got an irregular budget, look back at the last 12 months, figure out which month was your lowest, and base your budget on that. And whatever else comes in can go towards paying off your debt or savings or something like that. And then another thing, if you're self-employed, make sure whatever money you're making, put aside 25% to pay taxes. You want to wait until the end of the year and find out you don't have any money to pay your taxes. So every month, put money aside for that.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going right now. So, very good. Is there any other questions? So, okay. So when it comes to expenses, you need to find out what's non-negotiable. So, mentioned already, tithe and offering. We'll get you in just a sec. Tithe and offering, we mentioned, non-negotiable. Taxes, like Kevin just mentioned, non-negotiable. You need to know, what are you going to be getting taxed? You're self-employed, you got to pay that. Don't fail to budget for that, because it will hurt you, and the IRS will hurt you. They don't care. They do not care, and they're armed now. Bless their little hearts. Anyway. And then there's set bills. I mentioned, I know I need somewhere to live. I know I need something to eat. I know I need some kind of heat, cooling. I know I need transportation. These are things that they're just going to be fixed. They're not a negotiable thing. Could I, depending on what your job is, could you live without a cell phone? If you could, that's a negotiable. If that is your job is intrinsically connected to that, that's not a negotiable. Does that make sense? If your transportation, if your transportation is your job, then that's not going to be negotiable. If somebody could, maybe for a period of time, you could carpool with somebody or something like that, or whatever, then that's more negotiable. Okay, but even so, carpooling is not free, right? You still need some kind of transportation. That does need to be non-negotiable, okay? Real quick, we had a question right here.
Yeah. So if you do have a fluctuating income, and let's say you make more than that smallest paycheck and you just received a raise, how would you budget that 10% to go to God? Because you make more than that and you don't want to lowball God.
Yeah.
Because hypothetically your lowest check is the lowest one you've received in the last 12 months, but since receiving that check, you've received raises and you make almost double that.
Yeah, well, then you adjust. You start.
So would you do that on a month-to-month
then you
basis?
can adjust. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Would you do that on a month-to-month basis then?
Yeah, for
10%?
your tithe and everything. Yeah, because you're working on a percentage there.
Okay.
You're not working on a dollar amount. Does that make sense? So a tithe is a percentage issue, whereas your rent let's say $1,000 a month, well, it's $1,000 a month if I get a raise or not, right? Whereas my tithe is based on a percentage. I make $1,000 this month, my tithe is $100. I make $2,000 next month, my tithe is $200 because it's percentage. It's percentage connected. Does that make sense? You got anything to add to that, Kevin? Okay, so that's what I would say on that. Okay, good question. Very good. All right, so then you find out which expenses are negotiable and then which ones are not negotiable. So let's say food, for example. I could do, you could perhaps eat at Texas Roadhouse. Or you could perhaps eat a bowl of ramen. Both is food, right? Some of you disagree with that. No. Ramen is not food, yeah. But, so there's some flexibility in that. It is a non-negotiable. Food is a non-negotiable. You will die if you don't eat. Even though there's some tree huggers or whatever talked about an air diet or, I don't know, anyway, whatever. You need food, right? You need food. You need transportation. You need a house. Now, so you want to figure out, okay, I need my phone. All right, very good. Which plan do you need on your phone? I need the top of the line. Do you really need the top of the line? Can you afford it? No, I can't. Okay, do you really need it? No. Okay. Could you use Wi-Fi more often, or something? I don't know, whatever. So you need to figure out what is negotiable, where is there some flexibility? And then you trim accordingly, especially if you're in debt. You have to trim. You would be absolutely, and I'm sure Kevin's already talking about this, but you would be absolutely astonished at how much $1 here, $2 there, how quickly that adds up and how much it adds up to over time, right? And so when you consistently are able to shave off, hey, I got this cell phone plan and it's $100 a month, or there's this other cell phone plan, it's not everything I want, but it is everything I need, and it's $50 cheaper, that's huge, especially over a year period. Man, you're talking some money there, okay? Every week I go out to eat twice a week, 3 times a week. Whew, brother, you're going to be blessed, right? Or you're going to be stressed. You're probably going to be stressed. Blessed, but stressed because, right? Stressed because, it's expensive. I could be just as good. Hey, do I need a steak? Or will I survive with some tortilla soup at the house? Some chicken. Hey, suck it up, trim it down a little bit on things that are negotiable. And life is a lot more peaceful because you're not carrying that stress of and the regret, that the debt that's weighing on your mind flavors every bite you take of that steak. Tastes like green paper flying out the window. Dang, that's not very good, right? So it affects you, okay? So then you add up your expenses, you subtract them from your income, and hopefully there's something left. If there's not something left, guess what we need to do? We need to adjust our expenses. And your income would be, if you can get a raise, if I can get a better job. But the first step is going to be try to adjust your expenses, okay? If you have a surplus, just like Kevin mentioned, put it toward, if you're in debt, put it towards your debt. If you're not in debt, savings, right? Or, you know what? If you already are, you have some cushion, you have an emergency fund set up, and you can bless somebody, you want to bless somebody with some extra, or there's something that you've been wanting to get that, now you can, and it fits in your budget, and everything is above board, hey, God bless you. Not necessarily wrong, all right? But then you could also invest it. You could, wise decisions with any kind of surplus. Okay, let it bless you. Let it be a blessing. Now, if you're spending more than you're taking in, everything, something needs to change. Okay, so this is where you really start to trim down on your negotiables. One negotiable that you might not like to hear is your car and your house. Do I really need this fancy of a home? It's me and my wife, and that's it. We got a 7-bedroom mansion, and we're upside down. We're in the red every month. Well, guess what? You might be able to be just fine. A 2-bedroom house would be more than enough for a couple. And I'm saying if you're in the red, right? Everybody tracking? I'm not saying that if you're a single couple, if you're just a couple and you have more than 2 bedrooms in your house, you're sinning and you're going to, that's what I'm saying, okay? But if you just can't afford it, you can't afford it. Why hold on to something that's sinking you and causing issues if you could make an adjustment there and have a whole lot more peace in life? Right? I might as well make the adjustment. Your car, your vehicle, there's options. Could you get do I need a brand spanking new one? I don't know. Do you? Can you afford it? If you can, hey, God bless you. Go for it. If you can't and you do it anyway, that's going to be a problem. You're going to suffer for that. You're going to cause issues to yourself, your family. You're going to limit yourself, and you're going to have issues. Could you sell that and get into a good quality used car that's not exactly everything you like or everything you want? Yeah, that would be way wiser, and a whole lot. You'd be amazed. You could do a couple simple things to your ride and make it, hey, this is mine, and you can be happy with that. Okay? Ask me how I know. And so anyway, this is, you always want to start with your negotiables on that kind of stuff. Do I really need a subscription to whatever? Well, if you're in ministry, why do you have that in the first place? But if you're not, well, do you really need a subscription to Netflix that pumps your home full of LGBTQ propaganda? And you're paying them for it? I guess I could probably do without that, couldn't I? Right? Yeah, why not? Disney Plus. No, anyway, everybody gets mad at me because I talk about Disney. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, so now when you're talking about a budget, you also need to, it's not just those things. There's a principle in life, you probably noticed it. If it moves, it breaks sooner or later. Right? So, things on your house that move tend to break, right? Water, electrical, currents, things move, things happen. Jimmy looks confused over there. He doesn't understand. Electricity moves. No. Your car moves. There's all kinds of moving parts. Doors, wheels, engine, right? So what do you have to plan for? You have to plan for things breaking. And so maintenance, a car, man, when it comes to your vehicle, you're not looking at, let's say you have a payment on your vehicle. What else do you have? Non-negotiable. If you're going to drive it, fuel, okay, what else? Oil changes, yes. What else? Insurance. I can't hear. Tires, maintenance, yeah. So those need to be priorities, You really want to tint your windows, and you really want to get a boom system. Well, bless you, okay. But when was the last time you checked your oil or changed your oil? Well, okay, so can I just tell you something? A moving vehicle that operates and is not blown up is way better than one that looks cool with your tinted windows, right? Let's leave the window tint for on down the road. I need to keep changing the oil, okay? and make sure this thing's going to keep going. Because if not, well, now I'm getting priorities out of line, and it's going to be difficult. And so, kids, how many know kids change everything? Revelation. Yeah. So, okay, kids need, what do kids frequently need? Diapers, clothes, because they're constantly growing or tearing up what they're wearing. Or if you're like somebody like me, you're tearing up your own clothes too. So, okay, you need to plan for some upkeep in that kind of stuff. What else do kids have? Accidents, especially if you've got boys. You know, you're probably not going to make it through childhood without some trips to the doctor, some stitches, and maybe a cast. And okay, so that needs to be considered. That needs to be in your somewhere in your budget. It might be in your emergency fund, but you need to have those kinds of things, okay? Now, you can do an annual budget on and figure out what is my maintenance on my car you can get a ballpark figure, and then you want to figure a little higher, just because stuff there's always the unexpected, you know. Let's say your thermostat goes bad and it overheats. Well, great, now I got to, instead of just a coolant flush and everything, now I got to do a head gasket as well. Well, that wasn't in the budget, but if you were at least planning for that, you can have some cushion there, okay? And then no budget is ever successful unless it includes savings. So savings, this is assuming that you're not in debt, right, Kevin? Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get rid of your debt, but then you need to budget in savings, a dedicated amount. There's probably several ways to do that. You could probably do a dollar amount, or you could do a percentage even, but you want to budget that into your budget. I'm going to put away money for savings. Kevin?
I was going to say, even if you're in debt, you ought to put aside at least $1,000 in your savings so you don't have to use your credit card.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So, and God blesses this. Let's look at Proverbs 10:4. We're going to open up for, what time is it? What time is it? Time. Oh, wow, we're there. Dang it. All right, Proverbs 10:4.
He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich.
Okay. All right, so a budget really helps with the priorities in life. You can get it, if you can get it down on paper, it'll really help you consider what are the priorities in my life, right? If you already have your priorities clear, but you haven't done a budget, it's going to help you with your budget. But the two of them, it kind of forms some responsibility and accountability in that, and with your finances. You will not experience the kingdom prosperity without a budget. So just want to put that out there this morning. That is all we have time for this morning. We're going to start with our service here in just a couple minutes. Thank you.